So this is going to be lesson 310, and here we're going to be looking at patterns with decimals. We're going to look at how can we use addition or subtraction to describe a pattern or create a sequence with decimals. Here's our first problem, and it's telling us that we can find the pattern in a sequence by comparing one term with the next term. Um, so we have our sequence here, $5, $6.75, $8.50, $10.25, and we want to figure out a rule that would help us to describe this sequence of numbers, to find the pattern here. The first thing that I'm going to do when I look at this is I am going to look at, are my numbers increasing in size or decreasing in size as I go? And let me just change the size of our pen really quick. So $5 compared to $6.75. Hopefully we recognize that $6.75 is greater. So we're going to be adding as we work through this sequence. Now sometimes sequences will grow with multiplication or shrink with division, but when it comes to working decimals, so far all we've learned is addition and subtraction. So these are all going to be about addition or subtraction. So again, I know that my sequence is getting larger because each number gets bigger, right? $8.50 is greater than $6.75, $10.25 is greater than that, so on and so forth. So the next step after I figure out that my pattern is increasing in size through addition is I need to figure out how much bigger each number is. And the easiest way to do that is to take two terms in our pattern that are adjacent, that means side by side, and I just need to find the difference between them. So I'm going to do that through subtraction. So I'm going to take my bigger number, which is $6.75, and I'm going to subtract from that $5, right? So this should be pretty basic, right? 5 minus 0 is 5. 7 minus 0 is 7. 6 minus 5 is 1. I need to make sure to put my decimal in my answer. So I see here that my pattern is increasing by $1.75 each time we add a new number to it, right? So that's my rule, is that I'm adding $1.75. Now, when after I find this initial number, the next thing I want to do just to make sure is I'm going to apply this rule to another set of my numbers to see if it works out. So in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to choose my second number here, $6.75. And I am going to apply my rule by adding $1.75 to it. Well, 5 plus 5. Well, first of all, right, we line up our decimal. Then I start over here in the smallest place. 5 plus 5 is 0. Regroup my 1. 7 plus 7 is 14 plus 1 more is 15. I regroup again. I make sure to put my decimal in my answer. And then 6 plus 1 is 8, right? And because this number that I found matches the third term in my sequence, then I have a pretty good idea that my rule of adding 175 is going to work. Now, you might be asking yourself, when would we use math like this? And they've provided us with a story problem that matches. And it says here that a state park rents canoes for guests to use at the lake. It costs $5 to rent a canoe for 1 hour, $6.75 for 2 hours, $8.50 for 3 hours, and $10.25 for 4 hours, right? So we know, right, that this is a situation where we are using this idea, this rule, right? We see a place that rents canoes. They have an initial cost, and then each hour costs a little bit more. We found out by working through our sequence that for the first hour is $5, and then each additional hour adds that $1.75. And so what they want us to do with this problem to go further is they want us to figure out how much would it cost to rent it for 7 hours. Well, 4 hours, they tell us, is $10.25, right? So we would need to add to that $1.75 to find out how much it's going to cost for 5 hours, right? So 10.25 plus 1.75, that is 0, regroup, that's 10 as well, regroup, 12. So for 5 hours, it's going to cost us $12.00. So then we would add to that another $1.75. Hopefully we can see pretty easily here that this is going to be $13.75. So for 6 hours, it's $13.75. And then for the 7th hour, we would once again add our cost for 6 hours, which was $13.75. And we would add our rule, right? It's another $1.75 per hour. 5 plus 5 is 0. That is going to be 15. 3 plus 1 plus 1 is 5. And then 1. So for 7 hours, it is $15 and, not 70 cents, but 50 cents, right? That is what we found as we did our math down here. So this is what we're doing today. We're looking at sequences of numbers. We're identifying a rule, and then we're applying that rule to that set of numbers. Let's take a look at another one and see what we can do here. All right, so here what they've done is they've given us a set of numbers. They've got 3 terms that are missing. They want us to write a rule for our pattern and then find the unknown terms. So again, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at our numbers and I'm going to say, are they getting bigger or smaller, right? And 29 is more than 28. So this problem is going to involve subtraction. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take 2 terms that are adjacent and I'm going to find the difference between them. So I'm going to take my larger number, 29 and 6/10, and I'm going to subtract from it 28 and 3/10. Again, taking time to make sure I've lined up my decimal. 6 minus 3 is 3. Place my decimal in my answer. 9 minus 8 is 1, and 2 minus 2 is 0. So my rule here is that I am subtracting 1 and 3/10 with each iteration of my problem. Again, I want to kind of apply this to just double check it and make sure. So I'm going to take 28 and 3/10. I'm going to subtract 1 and 3/10 because this one's quick, right? 0, that's 7, and that's 2. And because this term matches my answer here, I know that my rule is correct, right? So I'm subtracting 1 and 3/10 each time. Now to fill in each of my missing terms of my problem here, I'm just going to keep working through this, right? I'm going to take this term that's right before my first missing term, so that's 25 and 7/10. I'm going to subtract 1 and 3/10 because that's what I determined my rule was. 7 minus 3 is 4, decimal. 5 minus 1 is also 4, and then 2 minus nothing is 2. So this term is 24 and 4/10. Now to find the next one, I just keep going, right? I subtract 1 and 3/10 here. 4 minus 3 is 1. Bring down my decimal. 4 minus 1 is 3. And then this next term is 23 and 1/10. And then to find the final term, I'm going to take that 23 and 1/10 and subtract 1 and 3/10. Here I have to do some regrouping, right? So I come to the 3, I turn it into a 2, and now I have 11/10 minus 3/10 is 8/10. 2 minus 1 is 1. And then there we are. So 21 and 8/10. Right? So again, first step, is our sequence of numbers getting larger or smaller? If it's getting smaller, like this one is, we're subtracting. I take two adjacent terms and find the difference between the two of them. I double check my rule, and then I apply it to my pattern so that I can find the missing terms. Okay, here, same idea, right? But go ahead and pause it, and we are going to look at A first. Give it a try, see how you do. All right. Here 65 and 9/10 is greater than 65 and 3/10, so I know that I am subtracting. I take my two adjacent terms and I need to find the difference between them. 65 and 9/10 minus 65 and 3/10. 9 minus 3 is 6. 65 minus 65 is 0. So my rule is that I am subtracting 6/10 each time, right? That's my rule right there. Now I just need to apply this rule to my sequence of numbers. So I am going to take 65 and 3/10, and I am going to subtract 6/10. Again, that's my rule, right? I have to do a little regrouping here. 13 minus 6 is 7. Don't forget your decimal in your answer. 64 minus nothing is, in fact, 64. So my missing term is 64 and 7/10. Unfortunately, I think it's a little small for me to write it in there today. So that's that one. Hopefully you did all right. Now we can also work with this idea in this way, right? They here, instead of giving us a sequence of terms, they told us to write the first four terms of this sequence. Our rule here is that we're going to start at 0 and 3,500. So the first number in my sequence is already given to me. Now after that, I'm just going to fill in the rest of this by adding 1,500. So I start with 3,500 and I add to that 1,500. 5 plus 5 is 0. Regroup. 3 plus 1 is 5. So my next term is 0 and 50/100 or 5/10. And then I add another 15/100 to find my third term. Well, 5 plus 0 is 5. 5 plus 1 is 6. So my third term is 0 and 65/100. And then to find the fourth term, I just simply add 15/100 one more time, right? Because that's the rule they've given me. That's 0. I regroup. 6 plus 1 is 8. And our fourth term is 8/10 or 80/100. All right, we're going to look at just two more, and then you're going to be on your own. Right here, they just want you to write a rule for this sequence. So go ahead and pause it, give it a try, see how you do, and come back and check. Here, it's pretty clear to see that we are getting larger. We're adding with each iteration, right? 5/10 is less than 1 and 8/10. So I'm going to take 1 and 8/10, going to subtract my adjacent term that's smaller, right? I took these two to find the difference between them. 1 and 8/10 minus 5/10 is 1 and 3/10. So each time this sequence or the terms add on 1 and 3/10. And again, we could check that by adding 1 and 3/10 to 1 and 8/10. 3 plus 8 is 11. 1 plus 1 is 3. And this matches that. So we're good. Last one. Here, you're going to start at 10 and 64/100 and subtract 1 and 45/100. Go ahead, pause it, try it, come back and check. Again, our first term is given to us. It's 1 and 10 and 64/100. I'm going to subtract from that 1 and 45/100. So you have to do some regrouping, right? 14 minus 5 is 9. 5 minus 4 is 1. 10 minus 1 is 9. So my next term is 9 and 19 hundredths. Going to subtract 1 and 45 hundredths. Again, 9 minus 5 is 4. Do some regrouping, right? 11 minus 4 is 7. But my decimal answer, 8 minus 1 is also 7. So my third term is 7 and 74 hundredths. And then finally, one last time, we take our 7 and 74 hundredths and subtract from it 1 and 45 hundredths. Do another bit of regrouping. 4 minus 5 is again 9. 6 minus 4 is 2. 7 minus 1 is 6. And so the last term in our sequence here is 6 and 29 hundredths. So that's the basics of lesson 310. Give it a try and let me know if you have any questions along the way.